Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're listening to across the world. I'm Bill Anderson, and we are coming live from the Costa del Sol. It's a beautiful sunny day again, and it was interesting just listening to the adverts before we started there, because one was about living in Malta, and actually my guest today, Valerie Williams, welcome Val.
Thank you.
Was born in Malta.
Yes.
Val, when were you born in Malta?
I was born on February the 21st, 1939, which makes me ancient.
I can hear people doing the mathematics now, getting the mobile phones out with the calculator.
Yeah.
But I have to say, Val, you've joined me today to do this show, and you are a very sprightly 82-year-old.
Thank you. You worked it out.
I worked it out, yes.
Yeah.
So you were born in Malta, just about, what would it be, 6 months before World War II started?
Yes.
How did the family end up in Malta, Val?
Well, my mother married my father, who was in the RAF, and she was from Birmingham. And because there was a station in Castle Bromwich in Birmingham, so they got married, and then they went to Malta because he was in the RAF, because there was a station there, and she loved it there. Of course, after Birmingham, it was quite a change. I think I would have loved it too.
I should just say that during COVID and all these lockdowns, you decided to put your life, or bits of your life,
it's all of my life
on paper. I'm sure you still have some secrets that you didn't tell, but never mind. And you published your memoir called A Pickled Past. We'll come to that in a moment. But I have to say, you said your mum was from Birmingham, and Val, you paint this very romantic picture of where your mother grew up. Sort of between the brewery and the HP sauce factory.
Yes, Ansell's Brewery and HP sauce. It really smelt on that road. It's Aston Cross in Birmingham. So anywhere rather than Aston Cross. Probably somebody from Aston Cross is listening to this and say it's a wonderful place. But I didn't think so, because I worked in a bank there for a while, and I didn't think much of it at all, really.
But it's amazing how over the decades, places that we perhaps didn't like then have changed and have reinvented themselves.
Oh, definitely. Birmingham's changed completely from when I was there.
Yeah. So anyway, let's go back, Val. You were born in Malta at a very early age. Your mother was pregnant at the time.
Well, I was born at a very early age. Yeah, definitely born at an early age. I was born in Valletta Hospital. Well, my sister, first of all, 2 years before that, I was born in Margate, and she was called Margaret. And then I was born in Valletta Hospital, and she called me Val. So I suppose there wasn't much imagination, really. Right, she just thought that's the easiest name.
And you know, I'm sure you don't really remember very much of Malta, because you left when you were 2. Tell us what happened.
No, I left when we were about 8 months, just after the war. Yeah, just after the war broke out, because they had to get the wives and the children out.
Right, okay.
And in fact, they only allowed the wives with children and one to help if she had 2 children out, and they just got out in time. Afterwards, they were all killed.
Really?
Yeah, so we were lucky, really.
So Malta was hit very hard.
Very hard. They're the Jaws Cross for what that's worth, for the amount. I read recently about Malta, and it was very hard hit by the Italians particularly, because Malta were on the side of the British.
Right. And the Italians hadn't actually come into the war at the time you left,
but they were about to come in.
Right.
Yeah, and we had to go through Italy. Of course, I don't remember it, because I was only 7 months old.
Oh, right.
But we had to go through Italy, and it was a very hostile area, and come into Paris. And of course, by that time, the Germans had taken over France. So there were nuns hiding in the station, waiting for us to change nappies and give us milk and so on.
Right.
And then they got us overnight to London, and my mother arrived in the blackout in London.
Right.
So it was very dramatic, very bad for her, I think.
I know from conversations that we've had, Val, your mum didn't really talk very much about that time, did she?
Never talked about it. Never spoke about my father once, ever.
Right, and there's a reason for that, isn't there? Because your father came to a very untimely end in the
Yeah,
Second World War.
I think it was about the May after we got back, 6 months after we got back. She was sent to Wales to some of his relations, which she didn't even know.
Right.
And of course, she spoke no Welsh, which didn't help because she was English, and they were very Welsh, and they spoke Welsh at home, and she felt isolated. And then she heard on the news that the Glorious II had gone down, an aircraft carrier, off the coast of Norway, and that 800 men were killed.
Right.
And he was, of course, among them.
So that was the first you knew that this had happened.
Yes.
Over the radio.
Yes. So she felt very isolated there in Wales, and of course she had no for the time being. They had no pension because the Navy didn't want to pay, and the Air Force didn't want to pay. So she walked 16 miles with us to the MP, and she managed to get a small pension.
Right.
I think it was 7 shillings and sixpence.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so that would have been in the early 1940s, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, but 1941?
Yeah. 1940s.
Oh, yeah.
Right at the beginning of the war, yeah.
Right. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
So, your mum, one sister then?
Yes, one sister, yes.
Ended up in Wales?
Yes, in Bryn Creek.
Creek.
Yes, in the Snowdonia mountain range. It's very nice. It's quite near to the 2 miles from the sea. The Tywin, Aberdyfi, Barmouth, all those places around. Very nice area.
Yeah,
quiet.
I did say to you I wasn't going to pronounce any Welsh place names because I would probably offend any Welsh listeners that we've got, because it's a bit like Gaelic place names, that they never really sound the same way as they look.
No, I don't know why people find them difficult, because I find them very easy, having been brought up in Wales.
Yeah.
There's Llanegrin and Aberystwyth and Abergynolwyn and all those places.
I can do Aberystwyth.
And Barmouth.
Llangollen or whatever. That's a bit more difficult, isn't it? So you grew up then in Wales.
Yes, I did.
And you've still got the little sing song of the Welsh accent.
Yeah.
Oh no! It's lovely. It's lovely.
Yeah.
So how was growing up in Wales?
It was all right. It was quiet, but it was a nice little village, and we had a little dance group, and it was all right. We went to Eisteddfods and all sorts of competitions like that. The school was Tywin Grammar School. Everybody went to grammar school because there was no secondary modern. In other places there were secondary moderns, but in Wales there wasn't, because there was only a grammar. So if you couldn't read or write, you went to the grammar school. Right. There was no choice.
But it looks good on your CV
yes,
anyway, doesn't it? So you went through your high school then,
yes.
and I do remember picking up in your book that they kind of changed the leaving age, didn't they? And you were just under the leaving age.
Yes, so I had to go to school, and my mother decided to move to Birmingham because there was no work for my sister, who became 17 then. So I had to go to school in Birmingham then for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
And how was Birmingham after Wales?
It was all right.
It was
all right. I was quite keen to go because you could go to dances and things there, and there weren't any dances in Tywin. But no, as a teenager, it was all right, but it was quite different from Wales.
Yeah, I guess that I haven't really, I've passed through Wales. I don't know it really very well at all, but I guess lots of areas of Wales are like lots of areas of Scotland. Even though they're small towns, they're fairly isolated, and there's a lot of rural area around them. Yeah,
but you knew everybody in the village. Everybody knew everybody, and people used to look out of their lace curtains and see where you were going and tell your mother, and so on. Whereas in Birmingham, nobody knew anybody. You didn't even know your next door neighbour. Yeah, which was quite a change for me.
Yeah, well, I grew up in the city, although Edinburgh is a bit of a special city because it's got lots of open green spaces. But but we didn't really know that many people round about. Yeah. So, what happened in Birmingham? I presume you were in Birmingham when you left high school. Yes,
I left at 16. I did my O levels, and then I didn't. Well, my mother didn't encourage me to do A levels, so there were plenty of jobs in those days. They were very badly paid, but there were jobs, and I applied for a job in the bank, Barclays Bank, and I went there in Aston Cross, where my mother was brought up.
Right.
2 buses. We were living in Castle Bromwich, so I had 2 buses in the morning, and then I got there, and I found it very boring indeed. So my mother said, "Oh, this is wonderful. You must keep that job for life." but I didn't want to keep it for life. I didn't even want to keep it for 5 minutes. So I applied to go to, in those days you could go, I think at 8 O-levels, and now they have 9 or 10, but you could apply to go to training college with that many. So I applied to go to Bangor Normal College, where they did domestic science. I was interested in cooking and needlework and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I went there for 3 years and did a domestic science teacher's qualification.
Right. And the cooking part came in very useful later on in your
Oh,
life.
it did,
didn't it?
yes.
Yeah.
Well, I thought there was more money to be made out of restaurants than out of teaching.
Yeah.
So I only taught for 2 years
Yeah.
and then went into the restaurant trade.
Ah, right. Okay. Love, the love life. Val. Have you been lucky in love?
No. Well, off and on.
You didn't need to think about that too much.
No. I met a man called Valerie Williams who was, well, he was very popular. He was a good footballer. He enjoyed plenty of company in Bangor. But I was disappointed because he was very much a man about town. But later I found he wasn't quite like that.
All right. So is this the gentleman in your life that you say didn't really know how to work?
He didn't know how to work at all. He didn't like work. So that was a bit of a disappointment when there was so much work to be done.
Yeah.
Because I think I had to do double the amount of normal work because he didn't seem to like work at all.
Uh-huh. But sorry, his name was
Avion, E-I-F, because F in
Avion.
Avion, F is a V in Welsh. So Avion.
That's what I mean about trying to pronounce Welsh things. You're going to get it wrong. Now, was it with him that you eventually took over the stewarding at the golf?
Yes, yes.
And that was in?
That was about, well, it was about when I was about 25, I think.
Yeah.
I decided that I first of all went and worked for the Victoria Wine Company, who trained us in how to run restaurants and bars for a couple of years, or about a year.
Yeah.
And then I saw a job going in the golf club in Harlech. So I applied for that, and we went there. It was okay there. It was quite nice. It was a nice golf course. There was a pavilion. And you had all the catering profits, and you had a wage for looking after the bar. So it was all right, except I seemed to be doing all the work, but it was okay. And then there was a major in charge, and with a little moustache, one lip used to go up like that on one side.
Moustache used to twitch, yeah.
With a twitch. And he was a bit snobby. Anyway, one day we were supposed to keep it clean. We got paid for that, keep it clean. But I was really busy. There was a huge golfing tournament on. They'd all come from Birmingham. Because in those days, the locals couldn't play at the golf club. It was only professional people from Birmingham and Manchester, which used to make me cross anyway.
Yeah, but I'm going to interrupt you because I did read this part in the book, and it made me giggle. I mean, you didn't really feel that these were warm people that were in charge of it all.
Not at all.
And it wasn't that it was just people from outside that came in to play in the club. They didn't want this sort of riffraff locals.
Oh no, they
it.
didn't want the riffraff at all. And we had the catering rights, so I wanted the riffraff to come in and have meals. But they weren't riffraff; they were very nice people.
Yeah.
And I bought a house opposite, and they objected to that. And then the major came in one day in the middle of a golf tournament when I had about 100 people in the dining room, and they could look through to the kitchen, and I was putting out roast pork and apple sauce and stuffing all on the plate and sending it out. It was Sunday lunch.
Yeah.
And he came and said, Mrs. Williams, he said, with his sniff, he said, I just knelt down in the telephone kiosk and I've got my knees dirty. And it really wasn't the time to do that because I was trying to put out 100 meals. So I got hold of one of the meals with sauce, with stuffing on it and gravy and pork, and I smashed it straight into his face and said, sorry, Major. He looked at me with surprise and all this gravy and everything. I said, in fact, I said, stuff your job. I can remember saying, stuff your job.
One has to ask what he was doing, kneeling down in the telephone booth.
I think he was emptying the money out of it.
All right, okay.
Well, I don't think he was doing anything else. Anyway, I got called in front of the committee of posh people from Birmingham and Manchester, sort of not doctors, sort of solicitors and so on.
The sort of lawyers.
And they said, if you say sorry to the major, you can keep your job. I said, no, I don't want to keep my job. So then I moved over the road and opened a restaurant called the Rum Hole. It was a bit of a rum hole too, across the road. But in the meantime, there was a problem because this was a pavilion, and there was something eating things in the pantry. We had pantries in those days, and everything seemed to move in the night. So I came in one day into this pavilion and found there were cockroaches everywhere.
Oh my goodness!
Everywhere. There wasn't a spare space. All over the shelves, all over everything. There were tiny cockroaches running everywhere, brown ones. So I got in touch with their health in Dalgellau, where they had and I got them to come and have a look. And they closed the pavilion down. Right. And at the same time, they gave me permission to open the restaurant, so that was really handy.
Right. and you were saying they didn't want you to buy the house because it was close to the golf course.
Oh, just right opposite.
Right opposite. And what was it they said to you? They didn't. You need to remember you're a stewardess.
Yes.
And doing something like this is quite above your station.
Oh yes, you couldn't buy a house in Wales when you were from Wales if you were a stewardess of a golf club. So they told me to sell it. Well, I didn't sell it. I opened it up. In fact, they became all friendly in there because I made 2 changing rooms because the pavilion was closed down.
Right.
I made 2 changing rooms in the house. It had 6 bedrooms, but I adapted it, and I allowed them to come and get changed and so on for the golf there. So in the end, they all were very friendly as could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was the house and the restaurant related? Were they at the same time, Val?
Yeah, we had 6 bedrooms. I let off. Well, we kept a couple, so I let off 4 bedrooms, and we had the restaurant there. Yeah. Then I bought another house nearby, which had 10 bedrooms. So I was running from one to the other then. And then this big mansion came up in Anglesey, in Beaumaris. So we bought that.
Right.
And sold those 2 other places.
And you were renting. Initially, your idea was to rent out the rooms for the posh golfers that were coming from Birmingham, Manchester for the weekend, and we'd had somewhere to stay.
Yeah, and we did quite well there. But once there was a tournament, and somebody came into the restaurant, and every man at every table only had one arm. And the man said, "Well, I haven't had much to drink." He said, "What's going on?" But it was a one-arm tournament in the golf. Another time we had Raymond Postgate. Raymond Postgate wrote the Good Food Guide in those days, and I wanted him to come, and he came along, and when I knew it was him, I saw him walking along with his Good Food Guide under his arm, and I knew his photograph anyway, so I made a big fuss of him and gave him a nice meal. And when he came up, he said, "Very nice meal at the Rum Hall, excellent, but the coffee is dreadful." Well, after that, I thought, "Oh, this is awful. Everybody's going to come in and complain about the coffee." So I got a ice cream board outside and said, I went and bought a machine with ground coffee and said, "Decent coffee, 1 and 6. Absolutely dreadful coffee, as advertised in the Good Food Guide, 2 and 6pence." And nobody ever had a normal coffee. I never used the machine. Everybody came in and they talked to the person in the next table and said, "Wasn't that dreadful?" "Oh, it's dreadful. The coffee's dreadful." And we did very well out of the dreadful coffee. We charged twice as much as their ordinary coffee.
Well, they had a story to tell afterwards as well.
Yes, and they got friendly with people like that. "Are you staying around?" "Oh, yes. Hello. Nice to meet you."
Oh, my goodness. Well, we're going to take a short break, and I've picked a couple of bits of music that, you like the kind of rock and roll you're in.
Oh, I love the rock and roll.
So I thought we would start with something which, well, it is what it says on the packet. Bill Haley and Rock Around the Clock.
Well, I saw him when I was 17.
Well, welcome back. I'm Bill Anderson. We are coming live from the Costa del Sol. My guest today is Valerie Williams, who is actually a bit of a legend round these parts.
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
A legend in your own lifetime, Val. When we had all this COVID things going on here and we weren't allowed to go out, you decided to put that time to use, didn't you?
Yes.
And start to write down really your life story.
Well, it's mainly because we had a lot of members of FOTA, Friends of the Theatre Association, and I was the president, and we had 850 members altogether, and I was sending out newsletters, and I found I had nothing to give them news about once the pandemic. We were going on holidays, we were going on trips, we were going to the theatre, we were doing all sorts of things, and suddenly all these pensioners, and mainly senior citizens, I thought, "Oh gosh, what are they going to do?" So I decided to write one episode a day.
Yeah, we spent today at home, yesterday at home, we're going to be at home tomorrow, and
I was worried about them, especially on their own. So one day I said, right, I'm going to do one episode of my life and see how it goes. So I got up at 7, wrote it all out, didn't even write it first. I put it straight onto the computer, and I said, if you want any more, let me know. And it went on like that. Everybody was saying, yes, another episode, till I got to 85 episodes, I think, in the end.
Yeah.
Every day. I couldn't wait to get up to tell them all about it.
And the title of your book, Val, is A Pickled Past. How did you come up with that?
Oh, that's Juliet, Margaret Norton Williams' daughter. When I wrote about when I put something in the bin and then tackled the policeman who jumped out behind the bin after me in shorts, said he was a policeman, I said he wasn't, and started fighting with him. And I wrote that down one day. This is a while before, this is a couple of years, 2 or 3 years ago. And Juliet said, look at her, she's in another pickle.
And another pickle.
So that's how it's happened. Oh, I said, that's a good name for a... for the pickles I've been in.
Would you say that your life is a series of pickles?
Absolutely, completely and utterly. Yes.
But even when you got into these situations, you always, firstly found a way out of it, a way through it, and always had another idea, didn't you?
Yes, some of them weren't so good. Some of them were good, some of them weren't.
Yeah, you were in the golf club. You threw a plate of roast pork in the major's face.
Yeah.
And I'm still not sure what he was doing on his knees in the telephone booth.
He was
sorry.
Well, there was in the old telephone kiosk, there was a place for the money, and they had to get on their knees to get the money out.
Ah, right. Okay, I believe
so,
you.
Yeah. Well, I can't think what else you'd do.
And then you opened up, well, your 2 places, a 10-room and a 6-room house. What was it, for weekends? Was it for
holidays and things. But of course, it's a very short season in Wales. It is a short season. It's sort of May till September.
And one of the things you also mentioned that kind of affected that was the birth of the package holiday.
Yes, that's about it. Well, I bought this huge mansion and 55 acres of land in just off Beaumaris, and I was determined to make a go of it, which I did for 14 years, but it was hard going because the package holidays came in.
Right.
And so it was really hard work getting people. We did pensioners' holidays, we did all sorts of things. And then Freddie Laker opened up and said he was going to send people from April to September, from Monday to Friday in the hotel. It was very cheap in those, a £65 dinner, bed and breakfast for 5 nights.
Yeah.
And then in February he went bankrupt. And I had nobody, and I spent a fortune on the hotel, putting every bedroom with bathroom, because of course there weren't bedrooms with bathrooms.
Of course,
and put in televisions, put in everything that they needed. Did it exactly as he wanted, and then he went bankrupt, and there was no bookings at all, no deposit, nothing.
Yeah. And was this where you had the Prince visit you?
Yes, Prince Frederick.
Prince Frederick.
He's been in touch recently.
Has he?
Yes, he said he's going to sue me. He said I am a prince. So you don't believe me, and you made out I wasn't. His name is Sidney Hopen, and he's from Manchester. He has a terrace house in Manchester, but he still thinks he's a prince. And so I went onto Google, which you can do anybody, and look at Prince Frederick, and he's one of the biggest con men in the country. But he's 70 now, and he's still conning people.
So tell us what happened there.
Well, this man came, looked very important, about 6'2", and looked all right. And he booked into the room and said he was Prince Frederick von Huyvon, something or other, Dutch prince. And there was no reason for me not to believe him. And then he rang up the Marquis of Anglesey, but I don't suppose he was ringing him up at all. He said, hello, Marquis, hello, whatever his name was, come and see you tomorrow afternoon. And he said, oh, I've arranged to go to Plasnewid to the Marquis of Anglesey's place for afternoon tea, and I'm going down to the yacht club. So I got in touch with the people who ran the yacht club and said this prince was coming down. Well, they were on their knees shaking hands with him and made a big fuss of it. And I just thought, after about 3 days, I thought, this doesn't sound right somehow. I mean, my mother lived in the lodge of the mansion, and she was very easily persuaded by people like him. Oh, a prince! She made scones, especially. Well, normal scones were like this. Well, theirs were like this. She got out all her special crockery, and she laid up the table in the lounge. Usually, you sat in the kitchen in my mother's, but she laid, and then she was bowing to this prince. So I didn't dare. Well, then I got suspicious, and when he went out to the yacht club once again, a big fuss for him. I got two girls who were doing the bedroom. So I stand there and watch what I'm doing, and went into his room, looked around, looked under the mattress, and there was his passport, Sydney Holpen from Manchester. So I rang the police up.
It doesn't have the same ring as Prince Frederick fan something or other, does it?
So I rang the police, and they came to see him. They tried to persuade the police he was a prince as well. Anyway, they said, shall we press charge? I said, well, he's done nothing wrong.
As long as he pays his bill,
But he couldn't pay his bill. But when he came to go the next day, I said, I'm sorry, I've got no money, I can't pay. So I said, well, you've given us enough publicity, because we're in the newspapers by this time, so he stayed free. So I wrote about him in the book, and then he got in touch and said he definitely is a prince. But he's still living in Manchester, as Sydney Holpen. He said he's going to sue me for saying he's not a prince. But
you could have got a plaque put up or something in the room, you know, Prince Frederick fan, someone slept here, you know, like they have with, you know, John F. Kennedy stayed in this hotel.
But conmen are so clever, aren't they? They really are.
But you know what? I think in situations like that, I bet these people actually do believe their own lies.
I think he does believe. I'm sure he does believe he's a prince, yeah.
Yeah, but did you get some business out of it?
Well, I got a lot of publicity out of it. And I did publicity out of all sorts of things. But even so, we did castle storming weekends, for instance. I tried to do different weekends. We did Welsh loving weekends to begin with, where they got champagne for breakfast and fillet steak and so on. But all that brought were the business people with their secretaries. They didn't bring their wives. And funny enough, I met one man who used to come every fortnight with his girlfriend, with his wife, I thought, Mr. Russell. And I met him in Mias when I moved here. And I was so excited because I was on the bus. I don't know why I was on the bus, because usually I drive up, but I was on the bus. And there was Mr. Russell with an old lady getting on the bus. And I said, Mr. Russell, how wonderful to see you. And he didn't look too pleased to see me. And then I said, how's Caroline? That was his wife. I said, this is your mother, and she said, no, I'm his wife. So every fortnight he must have been bringing his secretary to the hotel. Gosh, I nearly died. But she was furious with me.
And you were in another pickle now.
Another pickle, yeah.
So what happened to husband number one?
Number one, he drowned in our swimming pool, unfortunately. He became alcoholic, and one night he went in the pool and he drowned. It was in 1975 on the 25th of July.
Right, and there was some suspicion, wasn't there, that you might have topped him?
Yeah, but no way. There was a doctor's due on for a doctor who was leaving the hospital. There was about 100 people there, and they had a dinner dance, and I was in the dinner dance. And he went in after. I was clearing up with the group. There was a group called the League of Gentlemen, and I was clearing up all the glasses and things. When somebody said, your husband's in the pool, he looks as if he's in trouble. Well, by that time he was in trouble, so I wasn't even outside. No.
Right. So you're sure?
You're positive, yeah. Positive. Yeah. I was sorry for him, really.
Yeah, it's not a great way to go, is it?
No. And it's not great to be as he was, and it's not great to be an alcoholic.
No.
But it's very easy, especially in that trade.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work on the other side of that business and work with problem drinkers in the UK. And an awful lot of them belong to the food and beverages sector. Yes. Teachers were bad as well.
Yeah, but with the hotel and restaurant, there's a lot of time when it's quiet and you've got to put the hours in, and it's a great temptation seeing all those bottles in front of you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So that was in the 1970s.
75.
1975.
Then I applied for a manager to look after the grounds, and this man, quite a few, I misworded that. I said offered 53 acres of land in exchange for looking after our swimming pool I'd put in and gardens at the front of the hotel. I didn't mean they had the 53 acres. I meant that they could do what they wanted, like whatever they wanted with it.
Right.
And I wouldn't have to pay a wage. And they were ringing up from all over the world for this job with 53 acres of land offered free. I didn't mean it was offered free. So,
another pickle.
Another pickle. And then this man who was getting a divorce, who was a captain in the army, rang up, very posh, called David Mill, and he applied for the job. And I rang my solicitor first, and he said, look, when somebody rings again, say it's gone and just put the phone down. So this man rang up and said, I'm applying for the job, looking after 53 acres and looking after your swimming pool and lawn. And I said, it's gone. And he wrote back, he rang back and said, I'm going to send you a book on good manners, madam.
Oh,
So,
right.
yes. So I said, well, it's a bit difficult because I've worded it incorrectly. He said, well, I'll come up and see you anyway. And that was it. He stayed. I offered him free board and lodging. And 30 years later, he was still on free board and lodging.
Ah, right. And was it with David that you came to Spain?
Yes, and we got married eventually. Yes.
When did you come to the Costa del Sol?
In 1985.
1985,
And the week that
right.
the theatre opened, Salon Varieties opened the same week as I came.
Yeah.
And I was there at the opening ceremony.
Yeah.
And then I thought, what on earth am I going to do now? And then I offered my services running a social club for the theatre. And I did that for 8 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but for people who are listening in from other parts of the world, the Salon Varieties is it's a smallish theatre, isn't it? In
an English
Fonterona,
theatre.
an English theatre, and well, the majority of people are amateur.
Yes, and
amateur
they're very good
dramatics,
too.
Very good. And it really, again, has been a bit of an institution, hasn't it?
Oh, yes,
in the
yes.
area.
Everybody who was English joined the theatre. So we had 850 members. And of course, a lot of them knew nothing about productions. They just wanted to have the social life.
Right.
So I was very, very busy for 8 years.
Yeah.
And then I decided I was working for nothing, of course, and bringing money in for the theatre. And I decided I should go and do a bit of work because by this time my money was running out. Because I'd foolishly put 100,000 into Burger King to open a Burger King.
Right.
And I bought a piece of land and built a house. And I was getting to the end of my money. So I had to go and work. So I went in with Salvador at Lou Hode's and ran that for a year for Jenny and Lou Hode.
Mm-hmm.
And then we decided we'd also take on a little restaurant on the main road up to Mijas, which is now a Chinese one, right opposite the Danish Centre. And it was semi-detached.
Yes.
The parking was on my side, and there was nothing on the other semi-detached. So we opened this, and Salvador and I decided to have a children's restaurant where people could pull in and have carry-outs as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we called it Wolf's. And it was going really well until next door took over, and they opened a brothel next door. So that messed up, and they called it Loveland. And the men had to go along my terrace to go into Loveland. And there was all these elderly men coming along. I used to go outside and say, "Are you coming for nourishment or punishment?" I was fuming there in Loveland. And the police took no notice for ages, so we only had to give 2 months' notice. So we gave our notice in because there was no point in us trying to run a children's restaurant next to a brothel.
No, it's not the best idea in the world.
No, it's a very bad idea.
But it's interesting, Val, in Spain, you know, Spain has this reputation of being very Catholic country.
Yes.
And people can be quite narrow-minded in some ways, sort of by their religion and whatever. Yet at the same time, they have no problem with having knocking shops.
Well, the policemen used to go in there. They went checking up every time they went there, I'm sure. Anyway, eventually, within about 6 months, they did close it down.
Right.
But that was too late for us, but it didn't matter.
Yeah, they probably didn't have an opening license.
So then I went on to looking after a little girl because her parents were going back and forwards to England, so she came to live with us. I did other things. And then when my husband died, which was David, now we got married, and when he died in 2008, I was a bit lonely, and then David Bradford from the theatre asked me to go back to the theatre 15 years later, a bit late really, but anyway, I wasn't prepared before that, so I went back then, and then I ran photo again until recently. Right. And the problem, it wasn't a real problem, except it was only pensioners who were only senior citizens who were joining photo, because the younger people now went joining. They didn't want the social life because they had to work, a lot of younger people. Sure. So I gave him my notice, hoping younger people would take it over, but they haven't done, which is a shame. Yeah,
but I'm not breaking secrets here, Val, because it's in your book. Before David died, things were not very great, were they?
No, he started drinking too much, and then he got cancer, and then I threw him out. and this made me. I was lonely when he was thrown out, but I did have him back after 18 months, and he was completely different. He changed, and I was so happy about that. And then 4 years later, he got cancer, and he died of lung cancer.
But you ended up in the medical centre on one occasion at least, didn't you?
Oh, 6 months going back and forwards till he died in Malaga Hospital.
Yeah.
He was only 64. I was disappointed because I was looking forward to having a few more years with him.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that was here in the Costa del Sol.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Okay. We are going to take just another short break. Val, I'm just sending a message to Mr. Halewood. We're going to have a song that is mentioned in your book, or the album is mentioned in your book. And it was somewhere in the 1960s when the Beatles published their album. Do you remember what it was?
No, I don't.
Okay, I've taken the sort of song from it. Please, Please Me.
All right.
You're listening to Expat Radio, your worldwide friend.
Welcome back. I'm Bill Anderson. We're coming live from the Costa del Sol, and my guest today is Val Williams. For any people who are listening in who are from this area, Val's name has become almost a household name.
Goodness.
It has, Val. You are a very self-effacing person, but you just need to mention roundabout Val Williams. Oh, I know Val. I know Val. I know Val. Mm-hmm. And but part of that will be your connection with the Salon Variety Theatre and the people who are friends of the Theatre Association, the FOTA. Because you were involved with that for a lot of years. What did that involve?
Well, it was the social side, nothing to do at all with the productions.
Yeah.
We just wanted to help them out financially, because they needed it. And we brought in they paid at the moment, last year, till we finish it, they paid €10 a year to join.
Right.
And then I sent out numerous letters out, which people apparently liked receiving. And we did a social thing once a month. We did holidays, making a little bit of profit, but not too much. We always tried to keep the price decent.
And did you organise most of these things?
Yes, I did. Jenny Crespo helped a lot with the holidays.
Yes.
But we organised. We had a team of us, 6 of us usually, mainly women, who were on the board. And then we organised all sorts of things. We went to the theatre several times. We did have lunch out. We had a lunch club once a month, usually Casa Rustica, because it's always reliable. We'd have a fashion show in Raffarola. We'd try and use different places.
Right.
We'd have an evening do somewhere, and so on. So I have plenty of events going on for them. But mainly the idea was to keep the theatre going.
Right.
So we'd produce around €12,000 a year profit for them.
Right.
Of course, we made nothing at all. We even paid for all our own holidays and so on.
Sure.
But then we were retired and we were glad to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But then, the year of the 30-year anniversary, I went up. I suddenly thought at night it'd be wonderful to rent the auditorium in Mias.
Right.
So I banged on the door of the mayor and said, "Look, I've got a fantastic idea, please, please." And he said, "Yes, you can have it." I was so thrilled, and we made them a lot of money that year.
Right.
John Gale, of course, I couldn't direct the show, but we did all the work for it.
All the behind the scenes stuff, yes.
And we had 700 people there, and we made a huge. Everybody worked for nothing. One wonderful night, and we made a huge profit for them.
And COVID came along.
Yes.
And it kind of put paid to a lot of things, didn't it, Val?
Everything. Yeah, everything.
And you kind of shifted your focus. This is the thing I kind of pick up from you. You never stand still, Val. You've always got another idea. And you set up something, and we actually had Alan Boardman on the show a few months ago, and he was talking about simply surviving. Well, you were really the person who came up with the Simply Surviving. Tell us about what it was about and why you decided to go ahead with this.
Well, it was simple till Alan came, but I'm very glad Alan came. Yes, it started off with I saw all these places empty, no business at all in the bars and the restaurants. I thought, oh my gosh, this is terrible. I never expected this ever in my life.
No.
And so I thought, what on earth are we going to do? We can only go out an hour in the morning at that time. I'd go to the supermarket and rush back and masks on, and all of us really frightened. We were afraid to touch anything. And so I thought, these people are going to go back. We've got to try and help them. How can we help them? And so I set up a group called Simply Surviving Group for Facebook. Yeah. And all I wanted to do was try and help the bars, the restaurants, advertise on our site, and try and get a group together who'll go and, as soon as we could go out, go and support the bars and the restaurants and the entertainers as well. I knew a lot of entertainers, Ricky Lavazza, Juliet, all these people really suffering because all their income had gone. Yes. And so I thought, well, as soon as we can get back to normal, we'll have a little group of people who've got a certain amount of money to spend, not well off, but the same people as Photo really, and we'll go and try and support them. Yeah. And I wasn't thinking of charities, but Alan came along. He had free time because his shop was closed. And he's a wonderful organizer. And he said, come on, I'll join you. And I was very, very glad he did. But what happened was we then had extra money because he was doing the tours and asking for donations in Fengaron. And also I was doing events. And I was working out of 50 people to go to them. Yes. And I booked the entertainers, booked the restaurant, and I was finding 100 people would come, and so we were making a bit of profit. Sure. So, and we didn't want to make anything out of it. So then we started doing the charity, and we chose a charity every month. They started with Donkey Dreamland. They were delighted. Yeah. And they came along. Alan was doing quizzes. I was doing events, and then we went on to the food fairies and to the to Jackie Ross's with the dogs, the dog charity. Yes. And then it came to one that I particularly wanted to help. Esther from Quedeca got in touch with me and said, I see you doing some. I'd done several things for Quedeca at Fulcher. Yeah. We'd done bacon cake once a year. So he said, can you help us? Because we're short of funds coming in with this pandemic.
Just to let people know, Quedeca is a hospice. It's privately run hospice, but it's free at the point of service for the patients and for the families. So they really depend on fundraising, don't they?
Yes, and it's wonderful. Open. In about 1988, a friend of mine, Joan Hunt, decided, I met her in the theatre, a little old lady. She wasn't that old then, but she was a little ordinary little lady. And she said, Val, I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to get a hospice in this area because my husband died in the Red Cross place. They did their best, but he was very unhappy in Malaga in the Red Cross, and he couldn't speak any Spanish, and I'm going to try and get a hospice. And she worked like mad, this woman, and she opened this hospice, and the strange thing is, I said, I'll do a fundraiser for you, Joan. And in 1988, around that age, I did a bacon cake. We were the first ones to give her money. Right. And the strange thing is, we were the last ones to give her money. We had an event on the day she died.
Yeah, and Joan died, it must be about 6 weeks ago.
Yes, she was 92. Yeah. And she was running that hospice almost till the end. She was a wonderful woman. Sure. She devoted her life. She had all sorts of MB, was it, and different things, all sorts of awards, didn't she?
She did. Yeah, and again, the local authority where we live here in Mijas has said that they want to dedicate something to her. Yeah. It's very typical in this area to name a roundabout or something like that. Yeah. Which I think is nice. It's a big public thing, and it's just acknowledging the contribution, because although the hospice is based a little bit down the road from us in Benamadena, people from all along the coast.
Oh, it covers the whole coast, doesn't it?
Yeah. People families have used it, and it's not just somewhere for people to die. It's also the support for the families, isn't it?
Yeah, they send out loads of nurses and things. They do a lot more than just the hospice.
Absolutely. Yeah. And how much did you raise for Quedeca in 1 month?
Well, I said to Alan, let's try for 3, and he said that's too ambitious. I said, well, let's try for 3, Alan. All right. I said, first of all, we start the slimming. So I got 6 people to slim. 5 kilos, and that brought in sponsors 1,500 to begin with. Yeah, 14 weeks we spent slimming.
That cost me a tenner, that
one. You're lucky. Cost people a bit more. No, we said a maximum of €10, because otherwise I thought I'd put people off, and they were wonderful. So we got 1,500 from that. We did the event in La Sierra, with Dahlia and Oliver. Yeah. Alan did his walks. And we did other things, and we got €5,000
in 1 month. And at a time where as you say, you know, people are not feeling flush at the moment.
No.
So these were not like, you know, a dinner for €100.
No, just €20.
€20,
Yeah.
but you were still actually collecting funds for.
But it still made a bit of profit because of the number of people who came.
Sure.
Yeah, it's really good, and we still paid the entertainers. We weren't asking for anything free. We paid the restaurant, we paid the entertainers, and we managed to make that much.
And actually, the number of people you were helping out with this idea has been phenomenal, because it's been the actual restaurants, cafes.
Yes.
It's been the entertainers who had a very hard time when all this was not permitted. Yeah. And then the charities that you're actually supporting in the whole thing. It's been a fantastic.
Yeah, we've got a lunch club going every month. We don't make any profit out of it, but to get people together.
And
we've got
the breakfast club.
Breakfast club, so it's going really well. We've got nearly 800 members.
You've been doing that sort of between Fuengirola and Mayclass,
I've been running back and forwards. Alan's making me work very hard.
Oh, Val, listen, it has. I know we've tried to cram 82 years into 45 minutes, but it has been an absolute delight having you here today. If anyone is interested, your book is available on Amazon, isn't it?
It is.
Valerie Williams, A Pickled Past. Now, that is not a book title you can easily forget. And listen, I don't have a huge amount of time to sit down and just read. My wife though read it, and she was just giggling aloud.
Good.
and you know, we were chatting, Val. I think the lovely thing about this book is it's so real. And it's written in such a way, it's very nicely written, but it's written in such a way that it's like you're just talking to people and telling them the story.
Oh, thank you.
And you know, if anyone is interested, Valerie Williams, A Pickled Past, you can get it on Amazon.
Yes, you can. In Spain as well.
Amazon UK, Amazon Spain.
Yeah, we don't have to have it sent from UK. Okay. They've lost 80, in fact, when we find them. They've lost 80 on the way here.
Yeah, I
so
know.
I don't know where those have gone. Somebody may find a few around.
They're probably in the sort of import depot or something. Val, thank you so much for joining me. I have loved having you here and talking with you and telling us some of the things about your life. And well, congratulations to you for everything you're doing now. And I know that there are so many people who would put their hands together and say thank you, Val, for the support, for the singers, the entertainers, the charities, the businesses that you've helped to bring people into.
Thank you.
And well, may you go strong, and I hope when I'm 82 I look half as good as you do.
And we have fun. So if anybody wants to join, it's Simply Surviving Group on Facebook.
Simply Surviving.
So do join us, please.
Thank you, Val. And we are going to go out with a nice rocky song from Elton John. Have a lovely weekend, everyone, and thank you so much for being with me today,
Thank
Val.
you for having me.
Thank you.